Welcome to Malcolm and We, heard exclusively on malcolmpresents.com, a streaming platform heard round the world and beyond. Today, I'm Malcolm Berman. It's on the bottom of the screen is my co-host, Ayana Larson, and on top of the screen, we're our guest, Angel Short. Yana, introduce our guest.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yes, our guest today is Angel Short. She's the executive director at We the World, and she is a compassionate leader and empowerment advocate. She excels in streamlining and optimizing complex systems and nurturing growth in organizational and community settings. She is also a resource for domestic violence survivors, demonstrating deep understanding and commitment through the Hopes Wings Domestic Violence Program, where she previously worked. Her roles as a resident advocate and victim advocate have made a significant contribution, providing crucial support and assistance to those affected by domestic violence. Angel's work has had a tangible and lasting impact on countless lives, and she is dedicated to creating a safer and more inclusive world for vulnerable populations, for social justice, for community empowerment, for women to build toward reclaiming their lives. She is an inspiration to me, and she is my friend and colleague. Thanks for being here, Angel.
Thank you, Jenna and Malcolm.
Yeah, welcome, Angel. You look too young to be so accomplished.
That's what I
Gray
say.
hair, I don't think I look very young at all.
Well, to tell us, we're a Malcolm and We. Tell us more about We, because sometimes, we talk about it, but I think you could give us a better definition of what We is trying to accomplish.
Right. So, as with anything, it's very complex, We the World is. But to simplify it, we connect, mobilize, and accelerate global social change. So, there's many, many problems in the world. And what we try to do is bring these grassroots movements and people working on the ground to address some of our social issues that we have going on around the world, to get them all together and figure out how we can really move forward with making the positive changes that we need to be making in the world, because a lot of things, it feels like we're running out of time, and a lot of people struggle with, what can I do to help? So we try to, even though we're pretty, massive in our network, and there's many, many problems, we try to simplify that for people, so that they can more easily get involved in whatever cause is near and dear to their heart, and affects them personally.
Yeah, the thing, yesterday there was that debate between the presidential candidates. And what I was disappointed in is that, to me, the number one issue around the world is climate change.
Mhm.
No matter how, the different things that they might be able, the wars between nations, people having money are almost trivial in comparison to the climate change, which I know in Los Angeles we have these huge forest fires. Up north we have the rains, the flooding. All over the world things are changing. In the Midwest they're having the tornadoes, the hurricanes in the along the eastern coast, and also the temperature rising. And we're supposed to be really a hot summer. What are you guys doing with climate change? Or are you? Or do you have any special programs?
Actually, we do. So we haven't launched the initiative yet. So we have the We Power America campaign, with a focus on, starting the project here in America to focus on, the climate issues that are here, and then addressing the false information, or what's the word for it?
Lies.
Like these big lies, pretty much. These big corporations that, try to butter up all this badness that they're doing to the environment and make it seem like it's not that big of a deal, or they're doing their part to, help the environment. So the We Power America project addresses those two things, making sure that we're, portraying what's being said in the media around these environmental issues, making sure that it's fact-based and that people are really getting the actual picture of what's happening, to the environment and, different parts of the world, really. There will be sister branches, in other countries as we develop this project out. But it's a pretty big project, $1 million project. So we're working on raising the funds there so that we can get that started and really educate the public on, things that aren't in the mainstream media around what's actually happening with our climate.
How are you trying to implement that?
Malcolm,
Okay.
today we're talking about a very important issue that's about denial, right? There are people who deny that there's a climate crisis. There are people who deny that uh, that ex-President Trump was involved in any way with January 6th insurrection and all the things that came out of, or, oh my God, were horribly evident in the debate last night. But I wanted to talk today, and reason that I invited Angel is to talk about the denial that goes around and amidst the concept of domestic violence, and especially after we had our guest last week, Janet Nelson Grace, who we are working with, beginning to work with, she and her partner, with women's issues and talking about domestic violence. Her foundation she just formed called Grace's Place. And it really illustrated to me some of what we talked about, and reactions that people have about this issue, which is a very, very, very big problem of domestic violence. And you had mentioned, why would a woman stay in a situation like that is so awful, so bad, so horrible? And it was reminding me of my own experience with this. And so I wanted to reach out to Angel, who is involved with many things, but she has been involved with this issue. She has since left that job to devote more time to her position here at We the World. So, Angel, we were talking about the statistics, and I was checking in with you to make sure I was right about this, that women are more likely to be killed or hurt, seriously hurt, when they try to leave this situation of abuse, or even after they have left and the abuser finds them, by stalking, which I have been stalked by my ex-husband, and, goes to their place of work and not only, might kill her, but other people who are just innocent people around. Can you talk about some of those, that myth, and then others that too we can talk about?
Absolutely. And I can actually pull all of that together into, a concept, what I think is the root of not just domestic violence, but if we're talking about the environment, we're talking about the political issues, all of those things, like the root causes for me, for what I've seen and what I've learned and what I've dealt with, when we're dealing with any of those issues, not just domestic violence, there's some level of abuse involved in every issue that we're trying to resolve around the planet. So if we're talking about the environment, somebody somewhere is abusing the environment. They're
Yes.
polluting, or whatever it may be. So there's some level of abuse in everything that we are trying to address. So the big thing
Abuse,
is, I think, that
abuse,
people need
lack of interest, denial of the problem. Yeah, it's all related, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So whether we're talking about domestic violence, domestic abuse, or we're talking about the environment and degradation there, all of those things, the political environment, that's an abuse of democracy, with what's happening right now. So we need to take a step back and see that the abuse is more than just physical when we're talking about any kind of issue. And especially with domestic violence, it affects the economy. So, there's financial abuse, there's psychological abuse. It's a whole plethora of things. It's a very, very complex situation, just like it is with the environment. The emotional abuse. And I don't want to do too much comparison between issues here, but, if we look at domestic violence and how that happens, with the added layers of the emotional, financial, and psychological abuse that is happening there, you could see some comparisons to the other issues that we're dealing with in the world, where there's manipulation and there is psychological warfare going on. And even, just with the debate last night, and I don't want to get too political, but even just basic statements that, those candidates were saying that were many of them, not factual, but they said them as if they were truth.
Yes.
And they're convincing a lot of Americans, whichever side of the fence you're on there, that what they're saying is true. And there's really no basis for a lot of things that were said. And that happens similarly in the domestic violence situations. You have
Yes.
a perpetrator that is convincing a victim that what he or she is doing, the perpetrator, is the way things are. And
Justified.
it's okay. There's something wrong with you if you're not okay with it. And it's it's a very, very complex situation to understand how that happens and why a woman would stay, or a man, and men can be abused too, but why would somebody stay in that situation? One of the biggest reasons why is because it's probably not a good way to describe a perpetrator, but I call them puppet masters, and they have a way of manipulating and controlling situations that get people to comply. And if we get to the root of what abuse actually is, why someone wants to be abusive, the people that do have that tendency, they have an ingrained sense of entitlement to whatever it is that they're trying to control, whether it's a person or their environment or whatever it may be. So the common thread among all of it is a sense of entitlement. And if you even apply that concept to even just thinking about war, in its simplest form, someone somewhere, this leader or that leader, feels like they have a sense of entitlement to this country or this land, and they will do whatever they have to do to maintain control of that. So that's like a bigger scale of what domestic violence is, and where it comes from.
But isn't domestic violence different in various countries? Because at least in the U.S., it's as difficult for, I guess, we're talking mainly about women. Because I know there's another thing by men being abused, but we're talking basically about women in this country where there were laws against it. But there are other countries that society doesn't frown on abusing wives or women. Do you handle that situation also? Let's say I'm talking about let's say the Middle East type of things, or India, where almost it's socially acceptable that the male is dominant. How do you transfer the social mores of the country? I mean, that seems to be huge.
Oh, it is. And that's why these things are very complex and massive problems that people, they kind of get stuck on how they can help. Because, anything that's happening here is happening around the globe. Anything that's happening here in the United States. And my focus has been in the United States. But I have worked with women who are immigrants that come from other cultures, different, cultural backgrounds. And what we would deem as, horrible behavior by a perpetrator, it's common to them, and they have a hard time seeing it as that, certain aspects of that abuse. So it can get really, really difficult to, address the many, many different cultures and how it's the norm in some other places. And, it may be okay for, men in another country to abuse their wives or whatever it may be. But then you also see with the issue here, so in the United States, the instances of actual physical abuse over the decades, after, as people started really focusing on this issue, that we have here. The actual physical abuse, the numbers started to drop, but the manipulation, the psychological abuse, the emotional, financial, the perpetrators just got more skilled in how they got their victims to comply with their wishes and their desire for control. So they just got more skillful at the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse, financial abuse. But the violence is definitely still there. And it's a really, really big problem. And, just throwing another statistic out there, every minute there are 20 people in the United States that are being assaulted by an intimate partner. Every minute, 20 people. So right now, as we're speaking, there are 20 people that are more than likely being physically abused by an intimate partner.
Now what I'm thinking, the male who abuses his wife, would they also be prone to abuse their children? Or is there a correlation between both?
There is a bit of a correlation, but it's not necessarily always the case, because many times what a perpetrator will do is divide and conquer. So he will treat his children much better because they see the children see the man's abuse towards their mother, and they learn that behavior. And a perpetrator, the man, understands that if he can divide and conquer and get the children on his side, and the only way to do that is not, don't necessarily abuse them, but undermine everything that the mother is doing, talk down about her. He's the one that needs to be listened to, that kind of thing. He's a lot of times men are really great towards their children.
Yes,
And
and
we're
then
also,
they have their families. The family of the abuser will also, as part of that division and conquering too, be very charming around towards the wife, and when everybody's around. But as soon as they leave, then it's back
bang, bang,
to,
bang.
yeah,
Mhm.
and that is so hard to convince people that this person who's so charming and so lovable and so amazingly perfect can turn around as soon as they're gone and just go right back, like not miss a breath,
Yeah,
going back to the
but
rage-filled situation.
Yana, how did you get the black eye? How did you get the chipped tooth?
Yeah, oh well, the
About the
woman.
steps, the perpetrator will help the woman come up with an excuse.
Yeah.
Well, right, because it's not, he will say to her, now you're not going to tell how that happened. You know that you caused that to happen. You know that you were this or you were that, and you weren't paying attention, and you brought this on yourself. I'm sorry, but you did, and then if it's done in a ways that the kids don't even see, then, I mean, there's just, it's it's a horrible, insidious
It is,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, another topic, just to switch it a little bit, because I've heard, I haven't really heard that much about it. Male abuse, the husband abuse. Because I know, as a man, I don't know if I would want to claim my wife beat me up or abused me. Physically, mentally, it's another story. But do you deal a lot with men being sort of really not wanting to come forward
Oh yes,
because of it
for sure.
being ashamed?
Yeah. So we've seen, working in the court systems, with the protective orders. I would work in the family court and help the victims, get their protective orders. And so we did see an increase, and I think it's a good thing. We saw an increase in the men, speaking out against women who are abusive. It's not as common as, men abusing women. And there is also same-sex abuse that does happen as well. So we've seen an increase with men feeling more comfortable seeking a protective order, against abusive women. But there's certainly some stigma around that, and just very recently, and depending on what city, state, where your court system is, it's really different. The judges, the law enforcement, how they handle domestic violence situations. I can say I'm very proud of my community. Because we're making strides on, getting rid of the stigma around all of that for men and women. But yeah, even just recently, men would be laughed at when they would go to court to seek a protective order against women, like, because, judges would look at them or law enforcement and be like, she's like half your size. Like, why are you afraid of her? But any human being is capable of violence. And not everybody is equipped to defend themselves, including men. Many people don't know self-defense, without actually hurting somebody else. Those, kind of methods for not getting themselves in trouble, if they retaliated, or, their defense was too much based on how big the woman was or whatever it is. So it's really, really tricky for a man in terms of, you got the stigma attached to that, man up kind of thing going on with society that they've been taught. And really they also have to understand their power and not, go overboard with trying to defend themselves against a woman or whatever it is. So yeah, it's all very, very complex, but we have, in my community anyway, we have seen an increase with men seeking protective orders, but there's also, a little caveat to that. Men who are perpetrators will sometimes abuse that system and run out and try to get a protective order against a woman if she has defended herself after he's already abused her. Or, if he has an abusive mentality, maybe he hasn't really been physically violent with her, but he's intimidated her and made her feel like maybe he was getting ready to, and she lashed out and became physical with him. So really, and with every problem that we're dealing with in the world, we really have to get very focused on just this, just this one case, like what's really happening here, instead of trying to do like a blanket guidelines or requirements or whatever across everything and everybody, because perpetrators do get very manipulative in what they're doing. So,
And clever. Do you see a certain, like if you're, let's say, going back to talking about women, is there a certain SES status of people who come in seeking help? Like typically, I mean, one would think it would be the poor, battered Black woman. But I know that it happens in all kinds of homes, affluent or not, and that one would think that the affluent woman has access to the money, and so she can, like, sue him and, divorce him and get all this money, but that's uh, only in rare instances I would think that that would be the case where the woman would come out ahead and on top. And there would, I mean, I just can't imagine what kind of woman that would be, but because I'm certainly not like that. But what are your thoughts on that, or what can you educate us about with the typical picture, or is there a typical picture?
no, there's actually no typical picture. And we actually ran a campaign on that. Everyone knows someone. So it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how poor you are. It doesn't matter what culture you're from. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you're a boss or a coworker or, whatever it is. Your friends, like, everyone knows someone. They just may not know that they know that someone, because many times, and especially with someone that is, we'll just say, if someone has a wealthy background, it's sometimes more difficult for them to get out of that situation. Because of the financial issue, if their perpetrator has control of all the finances. I mean, it's same for poorer people too, but when you take a look at, the poorer community, the women in the poorer communities, what do they have to lose? Nothing, because they're already,
Yeah,
indigent and don't
already
have a whole lot of
already
resources
hanging on by
anyway.
their
So
fingernails. But the woman in the affluence home that's trying to, help keep the image of everything is wonderful and fine and everything, and I'm so accomplished and this and that, and in the play group's not going to be probably talking about what horrible things are happening, because that would be
mhm.
embarrassing. And so there's a high percentage of for women like that in all kinds of professions, doctors, lawyers, teachers, professors, that are in this position. I can remember a long time ago, I was just reflecting on this as I was getting ready for our, our talk this week and thinking on stories that I remember. It was around Thanksgiving. It was several years ago. A Black woman who was a doctor, she was very successful in her practice, but she had left the abusive situation, taken the children, and her husband stalked her, tracked her down, and killed her. And no one knew that anything had happened. It all came out later that this personal situation she was living in. Oh, who could she have told? I mean, one would think that there would be somebody, but a lot of times there just isn't.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's the whole horribleness of the experience, not wanting to,
Well, I think that
admit
also answers the question of why doesn't she leave? Well, first of all, she no longer knows what's up and what's down. He's already created a war zone in her mind and made her feel like she's crazy. She doesn't know left from right. Like, he has worked really hard to get her into that space. So not only is that going on, but now she feels trapped because everybody else thinks he's a great person. And how does she get out of this and have the support that she needs from the people who are supposed to love her? And not saying that, they don't love her family or whatever, but it's hard for them to understand too. And I
well,
think
and if she
that's
doesn't,
like the
if she
simple
lives
answer to
like
why.
across the country from them, how are they going to know? Because she's not going to want to talk when she's in, crisis.
Mhm.
And when she's not in crisis, she doesn't want to admit it. She just likes to.
Well, she also can't explain what's happening because he's so manipulative
Yeah,
and it's so
they're
subtle
just
what they're doing. She can't explain to anybody like why she feels like she's in danger. Even if he's never been physically abusive, she cannot explain why she feels like she's in danger.
And then
Yes.
now on another level, which I have I have to admit, they have very limited knowledge of, physical abuse, women being abused. But my only knowledge is what I see on television, and I've seen a lot of the crime shows.
Mhm.
How effective are is the legal laws to protect women? Because you always see that the woman report to police, and she has, the guy has a certain area that he can't go, can't go past, but yet they come past. The women become, she's affected by more physical abuse than before.
Yeah.
How prevalent is this? How effective are the laws to protect the
Yeah.
woman?
So that brings up another good point because these situations are very complex. So if a woman is seeking a protective order, sometimes it's recommended that she does not do that because when you get a protective order, you have to list, it's a public document. The perpetrator gets access to that document too, but you have to list the locations that he is not allowed to be at. Now, if he is that extremely violent where she may actually get killed by this person. Sometimes as a victim advocate, we will recommend don't get a protective order at all. Let's get you into a safe place because if you get a protective order and you decide you're going to move or whatever, you have to get that amended and put that new address on there. Like, he's always going to know where you're at, always. And if you're really at that high of a risk, sometimes it's better not to get a protective order at all and kind of go into hiding on your own. And, I mean, it's horrible. That's, so we don't have any really good laws to protect against that because that protective order is really only a piece of paper when it comes down to it. It
Right.
only gives her, so like if he shows up somewhere, she can immediately call the police and he's arrested. There doesn't have to be an argument. He doesn't have to do anything wrong. He's arrested. But if he has the intent to kill, that piece of paper ain't going to stop him.
Yeah.
Just because she has that piece of paper doesn't mean, he's
Well,
not going
like
to come do that. So
I was
yeah, definitely
Angela,
more work.
Yana, our time is almost up. I know, we the world is a nonprofit. How do you finance your projects, and how could people who have problems contact you?
Yeah, so we finance that mostly through donations, but we do have some projects that are revenue generating, and we're working on, creating these other initiatives that will make us more self-sustaining. All of our information is at we.net, we.net. You can find all kinds of information there. You'll see our whole team. There's contact information there as well. So just reach out and we will help you with whatever you need or answer all your questions and get you involved in projects or whatever it may be. Always looking for volunteers. That's Jenna's forte over there. So
You guys are doing a yeoman's job, and thank you very much for trying to improve the lot of a lot of people worldwide.
thank you, Malcolm. These podcasts are really helpful, to bring to light some of these things that
Yeah, I
people may
mean,
not be aware of.
basically, that's it. I don't know much about your topic, but I know about communications. And basically, the where we're doing it is on Zoom. Anybody could go. All they have to do is know it, to have a computer or have a cell phone, and they can reach us. And if you have any contact contact information, give it to Yana, and we'll have it listed on Malcolm and We.
Great. Thank
But
you.
again, thank you very much, Angel Short, and thank you, Yana, for joining. And we'll be next week. I think we're taking a vacation, aren't we? A July 4th holiday.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we'll see you in 2 weeks, and a happy 4th. Bye, guys.
Bye.
And you're listening to MalcolmPresents.com. Bye.